Controversial right-to-work legislation may be on a fast track in Wisconsin. Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald says lawmakers will take up right-to-work when the legislature goes back to work in January. Any bill would prohibit employers from making deals with unions that require workers to pay dues. Democrats are not happy about these latest developments, but with smaller numbers in the Senate and Assembly, can they really do anything to stop right-to-work in Wisconsin? We're asking the new Senate Minority Leader, Jennifer Schilling, of La Crosse. Senator, it's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, were you surprised by this, and what, if anything, can you do to stop it?
I was a bit surprised. I know that we've had, this has been kind of talked about over the last couple of years of, going into the new session, if this would come right out of the blocks. And I really was surprised, I guess, as forceful as Senator Fitzgerald was earlier in the week talking about this. This is something that we want to do right away in January. I think right to work is wrong for Wisconsin. But as we move into a new legislative session, I mean, we are just weeks out from the election. And I didn't hear this as I traveled around the state that we needed to do this. What I heard is the voters, the electorate, they want us to work together. They want us to find common ground issues. They want us to cooperate. They want us to be problem solvers. And this is not the right way to start out a new legislative session. We have the budget really is going to be the big issue that will be before us when the governor unveils that in January. And I think people, they recall sort of the tumultuous time we've had in this history. We are moving ahead and away from that. And the governor really could, in one strong statement, really kind of put this to bed very quickly. He has said it is not really his priority. He has said that this would be a distraction. It already is. And so I think we really have some bigger issues here in this state that the working families and communities around the state want us to focus on.
You mentioned the tumultuous times that were associated with Act 10 and the collective bargaining legislation that passed. Do you think we could see a repeat of that in Madison?
I don't know, but this is not the right foot to lead with as we go into January, that this really is something that we've got many issues, many new legislators that are coming into both the Senate and to the Assembly. People are still concerned about the sluggish economy in our state. They are worried about job security. They want to make sure that as their sons and daughters graduate from a school that they are not saddled in debt when they graduate with those student loans. They want to make sure that we've got access to health care for themselves and for aging parents in the state. They want to make sure that the potholes in front of their streets are taken care of with our infrastructure. So I think there are many areas that we could be looking at that really betters our community, betters our state, and we are investing in people and infrastructure, and there's where we should be focusing our time.
A couple of quick questions about right to work and just to finish this part of the discussion. You don't think there's any chance the governor would veto this if it reached his desk?
I have called on him to say, look, you have been very careful in your comments in saying that this would be a distraction. But is this something that you could be very strong and put this to rest right now by saying that this is not something that I would act on? And he could do that. It's a little bit like the right hand doesn't quite know what the far right hand is doing right now. And he could exercise the leadership and say, again, this is something that I don't want to see on my desk.
Practically speaking, though, there's really nothing Democrats could do to stop this if Republicans wanted to move forward, is there?
The minority party, we have the role and the responsibility to offer other plans. We have the role and the responsibility to be heard, but we recognize that the majority party will prevail. But right-to-work legislation, as so-called right-to-work, it is complicated, it is confusing, it is not what it seems. And so I think really we need to do a good job of educating folks in the state about what this means, and really other states that have gone down this path, that people are earning less, there are less jobs, that it is not as it seems. It's a little bait and switch.
I want to talk a little bit about your new leadership role in the legislature. You're from western Wisconsin. A lot of times people in legislative leadership positions are not from that part of the state. You are. What do Democrats need to do differently to win elections, especially to appeal more to outstate, to rural voters, where they've had some problems in recent elections?
Well, and I served in the Assembly for 11 years representing La Crosse. I've been in the state Senate now recently, and the district that I represent really is a snapshot of Wisconsin, I believe, with La Crosse being the urban area, but suburbs and as well as a lot of rural areas that I represent. So we need to do a better job of connecting to those voters and telling our story. We've been on the right side as the elections showed through minimum wage referendums that were on ballots, on accepting federal Medicaid and expanding that in our state. Many of those issues we championed in the budget and on the floor and on issues. But we also need to talk about our rural schools. We need to talk about our economies in our small towns and what we need to do. And so I'm looking forward to bringing kind of that Coulee region common sense. I've been one that has been a relationship builder in the legislature, serving on the Finance Committee for 3 different budgets. I know those folks and have a relationship with them. And I know at the end of the day we will agree to disagree, but I want to continue to improve the tone and the tenor. And when I came into the Senate, that was one of the promises that I made, that I really wanted to work on that and restore that civility to the legislature.
And do you think that civility, very briefly, is jeopardized by what's happened here in the last week in the talk about right-to-work legislation?
It is always fragile.
It is always fragile. Jennifer Schilling is the new Senate Minority Leader. She's from La Crosse. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Next, the DOT's plan to impose new fees and higher gas taxes. Did the Transportation Secretary think it would be a hard sell? But first, here's the WisPolitics Week Ahead.
The Natural Resources Board meets Wednesday in Madison and will hear a report on the just completed gun deer hunting season.